Welcome back. I'm talking to Gary Heseltine, who is a police detective and a UFO researcher. Now then, Gary, before the break we mentioned that you have a website, which is Proofos. Can you give us the domain name first?
Yeah, well, the website is www.proofospolicedatabase.co.uk. Proofos standing for the acronym Police Reported UFO Sightings, and it's open for British police officers serving and retired.
Okay, so you collect sightings from police officers,
Yeah.
and some of them have come indirectly, some of them are historical,
Yeah.
others you've had reported directly to you.
Yeah, I mean they come from three main sources, from directly from officers approaching me, through freedom of information requests, through as now is twice a year the government are releasing UFO files, which obviously you can search through, and obviously some have been historical UFO research from books and things like that.
So you've just produced another annual report.
Yeah,
So
I began my research in 2002. It was launched in January 2002 with an article in what was then UFO magazine, Graham Birdsall's UFO magazine, and each year I produce an annual report because that's the way it works with me as a detective. It's easier for me basically, and this year I've just finished the 9th report and I'm just typing it up as it were. But the significant thing is that when I began in 2002, I had 6 cases involving 12 officers, and I can now report that I now have over 400 cases involving British police officers going back to 1901, and it's now over 900 British police officers, which I think is a significant figure.
yeah. Okay, so can you give us some of the most important points of the latest report?
Well, my latest case, my latest report will highlight, I think, in excess of, I think it's going to be 68 cases in the end,
Right.
which will add another 103 officers to the figures that we've already got. So this now takes us over 400
Right.
and over 900 officers. Many, more, probably 70% of the records, the reports this time will be as a result of the studying the perhaps 20,000 documents that have been released in the 2 batches of UFO files released by the MOD in February and August of this year.
So you go through those
Every page.
And you look for police reported cases.
Yeah, because these are cases. The majority of the MOD files that come out are correspondence files, but in amongst those correspondence files you'll find some very interesting information. But several of the reports, several of the files will just be about sighting themselves, members from the public. But if you go through there, you'd be surprised how many police officers are actually reporting things.
Right. And out of all of your data, have you come to any thoughts on geographically in the UK the different major areas?
Yeah.
Or is it just spread across?
No. I still think it's relatively early to get into deep statistics, and I'm not a big lover of statistics because I know that from my experience in the police you can manipulate just about any statistic you want. So I'm not a big lover of them in general. But what I can say is that I've done some statistical work, and the latest figures tie in pretty much with the figures last year. That it's about 72% of all the cases that I have on the database are multiple corroborated cases, which is important because again the skeptics will try to say that it's an officer that's tired at 3 in the morning and he's just mistaken, he's seen a star, he's seen some atmospheric phenomena. Well, this kind of like disproves this because this is multiple officers seeing the same things. So 72% of over 400 cases, you work out the figures, that's well over probably just under 300 cases and multiple officer cases. I've got cases that are involving over 20 officers now. In fact, this year's research has highlighted that the famous Cosford incident, of which Nick Pope did actually a very good job in highlighting at his time when he was at the UFO desk from 1993, that now I've got more cases that I added last year that officers came to me that increased the numbers, and I think the figure now is it's around 26 police officers were involved in that incident over about 6 or 7 geographical forces.
In that one Cosford incident?
In that one Cosford incident, watching generally two UFOs moving parallel to each other across the sky and at various times being seen at low altitudes, 1,000, 2,000 feet,
This was hundreds of feet across, wasn't it?
Yeah, hundreds of feet across, you know, that's backed up by an extremely important report from RAF Shawbury and one of the people in the air traffic tower who sees this object actually go over the runway.
I mean, my feeling on reported cases is that possibly areas of more mountainous terrain seem to be more prevalent. For example, Wales and certain parts of Scotland, and perhaps the Pennines, like the likes of Todmorden, and you've got Bonnybridge, and you've got
actually,
Brecon. And
just moving on from that, the statistical research that I've done based on last year, I've yet to do the statistical and add it to it, but I don't think it will be much different. Is that that Yorkshire itself, which is obviously quite a high Pennine area, if you look at from the police point of view, there are three forces involved: North Yorkshire, West Yorkshire and South Yorkshire. If you were to add all of those cases together as a single county, like most are, then you would find that Yorkshire as a whole is by far the biggest reporter of police UFO sightings. Why that is, I don't know. There are some reasons why that is. There's a very famous case from Todmorden involving Alan Godfrey, who I worked closely with for a year and wrote a screenplay about what happened to him. Now, he introduced me to many other officers who confided in him, and I followed those up. So that's maybe why there's a slight increase there. But generally, over Yorkshire is as a collectively is by far the biggest region in the UK.
And are there any cases which stand out for you, Gary, in the latest report?
I mean, when an officer comes to me and tells me of gigantic objects, which sometimes they do, and a case to point is an officer that's approached me this year, and I will probably, if you want, at some point do a detailed programme on some of the best cases on the database, because I think we're at that stage now where we can cherry pick and pull out some really fabulous cases where officers have come to me, and we'll maybe do that in the future. But just to highlight one case, there's a case where an officer basically is describing an object the size of 3 football fields. Yeah. Now, we know how big a football field is. Imagine an object the size of 3 football fields that's seen low, moving silently, gigantic object, multiple officer corroborated, and that's one of the cases that's come in.
Was it triangular?
Off top, I think it is a triangular object.
See, it always worries me because if you look at, he's the guy called Ed Fouché. He has said that the TR-3B, alleged secret craft, that's how big it is, 600 feet. So, and it's triangular, silent, nuclear powered. So, but the question then arises, why would they be flying them around Yorkshire Dales, sort of thing,
Well, the point is that where this was seen was in an urban area. Over fields within a town. This is not a rural location. It's a fields, basically, football fields. And this is an urban environment. So I don't know anything about whether we have developed triangular craft. I'm certain that we will have developed, and the Americans will have developed, stealth aircraft that we're not aware of. But the flight characteristics of stealth, fundamentally, and this is coming from Air Force experts, it's considerably different from what we know of UFO characteristics. And the general rule of thumb now, after 60 odd years of genuine UFO research, is that the UFOs have the ability to do instant stop, instant acceleration. They can make right angle turns, they can make instant reversals, so they can go there and they can come back on its own track. They can make vertical ascents at high speed and vertical descents. They can hover in total silence, be many hundreds of meters across, and they can, one of the most recent ones that I think we can add now is the fact that they have the ability to be radar invisible, not only to radar itself, but they have the ability, it would seem, to appear and disappear. There are many reports on my database where officers say that suddenly an object doesn't come into view, it flicks on and it's there, and then a few seconds later it goes. So to my mind, that as crazy as the idea of cloak it is, it's perhaps one of the best ways to describe how people describe, and these are police officers, rational people, corroborated multiple officer cases where officers are saying that suddenly an object appears in front of them, it's there, it's large, you can't mistake it, it's close to them, and then suddenly, moments later or 5 minutes later, and it blinks out, disappears. Now, I don't think we have yet developed the stealth capability to do any of those things.
Right. And you know, the Godfrey case is a very famous police abduction case.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, do you get wind of any other abduction phenomena cases through your work, or is it all just lights in the sky?
there are perhaps another 3 or 4 officers that I've spoken to who have been so traumatised by incidents that have happened to them that they don't want to explore that area, maybe go under hypnosis, because they're kind of fearful of what they might uncover.
Right.
But they've had sightings where they've been with other officers. There has been aspects of missing time, which is a phenomenon associated with genuine abduction scenario. But when confronted with, well, do you want me to pursue this further and put you in touch with people who can hypnotise you? Basically, they've taken, no, we'll leave it for that for now. Now, I don't take that they're lying. I just think that it's a very painful thing, as it is for many abductees, to actually contemplate that has happened to them, and they don't want to explore whether it has or it hasn't.
Yeah.
So I've got to respect that.
Yeah. I mean, I have had a recent abduction case reported to me via my website, and I've referred that to Dave Hodrian.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's now looking
the Birmingham group,
the Birmingham group, and he's now looking into
and he's
that.
doing an excellent job.
Yeah,
at Birmingham.
yeah. So that looks like a genuine case
Yeah.
from everything I've learned thus far.
The reality is that my take on UFOs is that I do believe that a small proportion of UFO sightings are extraterrestrial in origin. I think that's easily demonstrated if you put the best evidence cases out there. And so I try to do that. I draw inference to the best cases and highlight the ones that are backed up by radar, multiple visual, airborne, ground radar, those kind of things. That is absolutely solid data that you could present in an evidence in the court of law. That's where I come from. Unfortunately, the way the media look at the subject of UFOs, if you randomly say to a member of the public, what do you think about abductees and alien abduction, the majority will probably think you're just a nutter.
Yeah.
Because it's too big a leap.
Yeah.
And I believe that the way to draw people into the subject is to talk about the factual stuff that's well documented, well researched, that says, you know, a plane was seen, it was followed by a UFO for 200 miles, it was on airborne ground radar, multiple
It was the
aircraft,
size of the Albert Hall.
Yeah, you know, and that kind of thing. And then once you've introduced people to the fact that there are some very credible cases, then you can say, well, actually under the umbrella is things like animal mutilations, which is a factor. You can look at crop circles, definitely falls under the banner, although 99% of them are man-made, but there is a phenomena there. And then you can look at the abduction side, which I believe, and I was sceptical at first, but after 9 years of research, I do believe that there is a proportion of people that are being abducted.
And you looked very closely at the Alan Godfrey case.
Absolutely, that was the first one I'd ever dealt with.
And you've seen all the hypnosis tapes.
Yeah. I'm very privileged that Harry Harris, the guy who filmed these events and who set up the hypnosis sessions with 2 professors from Manchester University, basically, when I began to research the case in 2002, I think it was the first year of my research, he lives in West Yorkshire, I live in West Yorkshire, it seemed the logical thing to do. I said, Harry, will you let me view the material? He's very guarded with it, and I'm probably one of the very few people who've seen the whole tapes. But I watched 3 of the 4 regressions because the first one wasn't recorded, the last 3 were, and made detailed notes. I did it on my own, I kicked him out of his living room, and I looked at it through a police officer, and the only thing that comes from that is he makes mannerisms and does movements. I'm good at body language. I'm an advanced interviewer of suspects and witnesses, so I'm good at the psychology side of things and on body language in particular. And he does things that if he's a liar, then he deserves an Oscar. And that's what I'll say.
Right. Okay, and what about the future for you, Gary? Because you've got retirement in a couple of years' time?
Well, I could go on for many more years,
right.
but I'm hoping that if all goes to plan financially, that in 2013 that I'll retire and then devote my energies into UFO research in a more bigger way. Hopefully I'll have a book out coming in at that time about my police cases, because there's more than enough material there if I can get a publisher. So if there's anybody out there, please let me know. But yeah, I'm trying to push the Rendlesham Forest case, not because I want to sell out and make loads of money to Hollywood. I think you could do that with this story, but I won't do that for the simple reason that I want it to be an actual factual reporting of the case, because the elements that's contained within it stand up as fantastic evidence on their own.
I mean, we were talking about this earlier about you've written a film script, a screenplay as you call it. And you've actually discussed that with people in the industry. And then you've adapted it according to their requirements, because it didn't have a central character. So you've added a sort of taxi driver who's a central character.
I basically took it to a Hollywood producer who was involved and has got a big interest in the UFO phenomenon, genuine interest. And because what we have with Rendlesham is we don't have a central heroic figure who runs over the 3 days. It's an ensemble piece, and he basically came back and said, I know you won't want to do this and be reluctant to do this, but it may be a good way to create a character, a factual kind of base character that can be there, who can link the incidents. So that's what I did, with some trepidation, but I did it, and that's where we are at the moment. And I'm currently talking to somebody else who is who's made films, and so whether I'm involved or not, sooner or later this film will be made. The question is, how is it going to be made? And if I'm involved, then it will be told properly, and it won't be a Hollywood exploitation.
I mean, that's the thing with the Hollywood. You can count on no hands the amount of historical, factual stories that they've reported, that they've done represented correctly. You know,
I mean, Fire in the Sky, the Travis Walton story, wasn't bad until it got within the craft, and then it went into Hollywood science fiction.
It was just like, you know.
But that's probably the closest in terms of the way it was reported in the police and the way that they portrayed the town's reaction, the police's reaction, and there was suspicion on the people with Travis who left him behind, as it were.
Maybe the new character that they wanted you to add, maybe he could be the lighthouse operator, looking at the UFO coming in through his binoculars, and that would debunk that theory.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people who say that the lighthouse actually wasn't focusing its beam that way, but and the reality is that the person in the weapons storage tower would have known where the lighthouse was 365 days of the year, every single minute of the day. So why would he be surprised by the lighthouse? And in fact, I've actually done a little bit of work with Holt recently when he came over for a documentary, and I took him back out through there and took him to areas of the forest and retraced his steps and discovered where the creek that it refers to on the tape, and that's part of something I'm putting together as well with Holt to actually redress the balance, because in all the documentaries he's taken part in, guess how many times he'd ever been back to Rendlesham and through the forest and across the farmer's field and found the creek.
He'd not been there.
He'd never.
Okay.
He'd done it once years ago.
I mean,
nobody had ever gone back all those years later. Now that to me again is, if they're trying to tell a real evidential story of what's good at Rendlesham, they should have done that in every documentary, and they never have, because they're not bothered, because they've got their own agenda to work to, and the bottom line is, well, let's keep the bottom conclusion will be, we'll have a bit of good stuff, a bit of bad stuff, and we'll leave the public as confused as ever.
I mean, as you said though, it probably will get made.
I'm certain it will be
a Hollywood film, or a big
it's a question
film
of how
about
it's
Rendlesham.
made. It's a question of how it's made.
You know, they could just completely ignore you, and you're going to be pulling your hair out if that's
at
the cinema.
The reality is,
you've got to go and sit and watch it.
You know, I mean, there are films made about the abduction phenomena and TV series, and unfortunately, there have been very poor representations of actually what happens in the abduction scenario, and so it's nothing like. And so, if you know, that's my fear. But all I can say to the people who keep asking me where are we at the moment is, I'll certainly keep you informed. I'm certainly not going to sell out for big bucks. I do believe it will get made. Hopefully I am going to be involved, because I will tell a truthful story, because the facts are so good you couldn't write them.
All right then, Gary, well, thanks very much. Fascinating as usual.
You're welcome.
And you know, good luck with all of your work, and I hope you get your script into a Hollywood film. That would be
well, that's my ambition.
Okay.
Because it has this case, the Rendlesham Forest case, has the ability to widely change the general public's perception of the subject
Right.
in one foul swoop.
Right.
It can do what researchers have been trying to achieve for 30, 40 years.
All right, and Gary, thanks very much. And it just remains for me to say, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. I'm Richard D. Hall. Good night.